It's an absolutely brutal day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has just abandoned the Pioneer format. And if that wasn't bad enough, Magic is getting totally crushed in Japan.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for another installment of Mega Magic News. Now, before we get to the main event, I want to address some questions I've been getting. People have been asking me why I've been deleting videos, but I haven't. Those are actually live streams. Once they're done, I remove them from this channel and upload them to my live stream channel. So you can actually find all of those videos, any of those titles that interested you, they're all available over there. I will leave a link to that channel down in the description and in the pinned comment. And tonight, over on that channel, I'm going to be talking about how the new commander tiers are going to be an absolute nightmare. So you can join me if that is of interest to you. Now, let's talk about the news of the day. We're going to start off with what's going on with Pioneer. Wizards of the Coast really can't make up their mind what they want to do. The Pioneer format is a bit of a weird one, right? It fits in between standard and modern, and it takes up a similar role that modern used to have. Wizards of the Coast tried to give the format its own identity by going, yo, we're not going to put fetch lands into this format, so it will be at least that much distinct from modern. So Pioneer is a bit of a different beast, but Wizards of the Coast was successful in getting people interested in it. But now they've turned around and said, yo, we're not going to have any RCQs for Pioneer in the entirety of 2025, which is essentially abandoning the format, right? When it comes down to it, you will still be able to find something Pioneer focused on Magic Arena. They're making a Pioneer Masters. The whole situation is a muddled mess where Wizards of the Coast is scrambling around with these knee-jerk reactions. Now, the reason they've chosen to not do the RCQs, the Regional Championship Qualifiers, in case you don't know what that stands for Pioneer is because they want to focus on standard. If you're not aware, Wizards of the Coast basically butchered standard as a format and ended up getting it to be an arena-only format, and that is essentially the same road that Pioneer is about to walk down, because Wizards of the Coast expected originally that standard would still flourish despite the fact that they removed the Pro Tour and everything, pretty much all support from Standard, and then it fell apart. But Standard is the most important format in Magic the Gathering as far as I'm concerned, because it literally has been around since the beginning of the game essentially, and acted as a doorway to all of the other formats. If they balance Standard, then boom, everything else kind of falls into place. So some of the moves Wizards has been making, bringing the RCQs back to Standard, bringing Foundations in, is starting to help build Standard back up, because ultimately for a format like Standard to work, you need to have a scenario where somebody can walk into a game store, get introduced to Magic, get introduced to the concept of Standard, and then start to enter into Friday Night Magics, Standard showdowns on Saturdays, and then you have like store championships, game days, although the game day isn't really a thing that's part of the whole ecosystem anymore, but it used to be, right? So they would have this essentially from the time a set releases until the next set comes out. There are always events for Standard going on, but Wizards did away with that. They yanked away the RCQs, they yanked away the Pro Tour aspirations, and so what incentive did people have? You need to have this build up where you can go from one step to the next step to the next step, and so Wizards yanked that away. Now they're trying to rebuild it, but guess what? They're taking from Pioneer instead. So Pioneer now no longer has this ramp upwards. So you have people who are literally going, but bro, I've been getting into Pioneer. I'm ready for it. Like, I was super excited about RCQs. And Wizards just went, nah, we're not doing that anymore. So by removing that support, essentially they're abandoning the format and just leaving it over on Arena, where they can sell you handfuls of different cards for the format just for some gems, right? And ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, that means that Pioneer is going to be on a downward trend. Why would you pay attention to a format that Wizards of the Coast is signaling doesn't matter? They've literally said, guess what? A whole year with nothing competitive in that format. And you have to understand, a lot of Magic players' lifespan in the game is only a year and a half to 2 years to begin with. So when you yank the rug out like that, these people, they're not going to come back to the format. So Pioneer is absolutely going to languish as a result of this. And I think that we have something similar to the Brawl situation going on, where when Wizards originally created Brawl, they really just did it to sell us legendary creatures from Dominaria. Like, check out this awesome Brawl format. It's super cool. It's like standard version of Commander, and you can use all these legends from Dominaria. And then they were just like, we're not really going to manage the ban list. And the Baral ruined Brawl. The card's literally named Baral. So Baral, Chief of Compliance, destroyed the format because Wizards of the Coast wasn't paying any attention to it. So now you have Pioneer, something that they straight up invented to be your go-between Standard and Modern if you want a non-rotating format, if those things even exist really anymore. It can easily be argued that Modern's been turned into a forced rotation format where technically all the cards are still legal in it. Technically they haven't rotated out, but you absolutely have to have the new stuff or you are going to get trounced because the power level on this stuff is insane. So it's very possible that Wizards of the Coast looked everything over and they went, okay, we've got Commander, we've got Modern, and we've got Standard. These are the things that truly matter. Who cares what damage is done to other things? It's also possible that they're not even aware of the damage that they're going to do to Pioneer this way, the same way that they were not aware of the damage they were doing to Standard. There was a very embarrassing moment in Magic where Wizards of the Coast came out and said, okay guys, hey, we have our own reasons that we think that Standard is failing, and we're wondering what you guys think are the reasons too. And also, we've got some great plans for Standard. The first plan is we're going to make it into a 3-year format instead of a 2-year format. And that has had some seriously negative repercussions on the format, where you have more sets than were ever meant to be in Standard. And the power level of the stuff that's coming out is also bonkers with the new stuff. So you have way more sets mishmashed together, and Standard is pretty nightmarish. I mean, if you actually take a look on Arena, it gets even crazier, where there is a turn 2 deck that can consistently blow you out of the water. I've laid my first land. Oh, I'm dead. It's like playing against Flash Hulk back in the day. Not quite, because Flash Hulk was truly the most busted nonsense. If you don't know what Flash Hulk is, I have an old video on this channel talking about it, but it's a deck where you could literally win before your opponent had even taken a turn. So it's like, hi, I'm going first, and you lose. Or, hey, you're going first, and you lose before you even make it to your main phase. Like, it's some of the most insane nonsense. So, on that note, in case you didn't hear, Wizards of the Coast has said for Arena, they've got their eyes on the red ley line from Duskmourn because it's causing big problems in Best of One. Geez, I wonder why. It's almost like when you make Magic cards free to play that there's a genuine problem with it, right? So that's been an ongoing issue with Magic the Gathering. But regardless, Wizards of the Coast has made these changes to Standard, and they're basically bringing back the RCQs. We've got the foundations to act as an on-ramp, but I want you to understand, think about how long Standard has languished, and think about how long it's going to take for the format to actually get fixed from the changes Wizards is making. I have to say, the fact that they're focusing on Standard is a very heartening situation because I believe it's absolutely crucial to the long-term health of Magic. Standard should be the #1 focus for balancing. It shouldn't be about trying to create cards that reach into Modern, cards that reach into Commander, any of that. Standard should serve Standard, and everything else should grow from that. But we can see what happens when Wizards of the Coast basically goes, well, this format isn't that important, take away from it. We saw them do that with Standard, and now that's absolutely what's going on with Pioneer. But unfortunately for Pioneer, it was never a crucial part of the Magic ecosystem. So anybody who's genuinely a fan of Pioneer is going to be left out in the cold and told Arena is genuinely the best you can hope for in that regard. So it's a mixed bag sort of situation where it's rough for the Pioneer players, but good for Standard players and good for the overall health of Magic. Because when I go down to game stores and I see that nobody is down there playing Standard, I'm like, okay, we got a bunch of people here for Lorcana and other card games, but Standard isn't firing off at all. That's a bad thing. So at least if you're looking for the silver lining, Pioneer player being losers equals winning for Standard and overall, hopefully, for the health of Magic. We'll have to see overall how this concept of Foundations being a 5-year product actually works out in the long run, and whether Wizards will keep leaning into supporting Standard or if they're going to consider their efforts to not have worked and move on to something else. Because the company, it takes years for them to implement genuine changes, but they make these knee-jerk responses. We've seen it with, okay, let's make all these planeswalkers into legendaries and de-spark them all so that we can make them into commanders. And now they're turning around and going, hey, we're putting too many legendary creatures into sets. Should we bring back planeswalkers? Should we re-spark planeswalkers? Those are the kind of things that they're asking the player base. So Magic is all over the place. And I'll tell you right now, it is not doing well in Japan. So let us move on to that part of the discussion. I have a list. The top 10 trading card games series sales in September 2024 for Japan. Now, I'm going to put it up on the screen, but not until I've read out Magic's ranking out of all of these games. So this is a top 10 list. I want you to guess where Magic the Gathering, one of the most preeminent card games ever made, the grandfather of all TCGs essentially, because Magic spawned it all. Where do you think they rank on a list out of 10, okay? Over in Japan. So we're going to go through the list and then we'll talk about why things have turned out this way. Number 1, top of the list, no surprise here, is Pokemon. Pokemon is super ubiquitous. Everybody knows what Pokemon is, to the point where when somebody asks me, hey, what do you do? And it's like, oh, I talk about card games. I play card games. Like, oh yeah, like what? Poker? And I'm like, no, I play Magic the Gathering. Always get a blank look from like every adult. And then you go like this, hey, do you know Pokemon cards? And everybody is, I have literally never asked a person, hey, do you know Pokemon cards? And they go, no. Everybody knows Pokemon cards. So I'm like, it's like a Swords and Sorcery more adult version of Pokemon cards, right? And honestly, even the Swords and Sorcery stuff doesn't really apply anymore. Like, actually, we've got Michael Jordan in it. He's going in for a slam dunk from the new NBA Outer Space expansion. So yeah, Pokemon topping out the list. Number 2, Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is crushing Magic the Gathering. Absolutely. And apparently, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is turning out big numbers for their tournaments. See, Wizards of the Coast really dropped the ball in this regard. Once they decided that Commander and Casual was the preeminent format of Magic and the only thing that mattered, they just started smashing every competitive whatever and just went, it's all Command Fest, everybody come down and deedle around. And so they basically threw away these gigantic, epic competitive tournaments where Yu-Gi-Oh! Is able to pull down thousands and thousands of people for events. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Is crushing it in Japan. And what I've been told, but haven't actually confirmed, is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Card quality in Japan is a lot better than it is here in North America. My friend showed me Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. He owns a store, and he's like, do you know how bad Yu-Gi-Oh! Card quality is? I'm like, no, I have no idea. And he takes out this card, and he just drops it like maybe a foot above the counter. And the card the corner just went bam, and just completely bent up. I was like, what? When I felt it, it's flimsier than cards I used to get out of cereal boxes when I was a kid. So in Japan, apparently they have much better card quality. Number 3 on the list. Bet you think it's Magic. Nope. It's One Piece. One Piece has been making huge inroads. And apparently, the booster packs of One Piece are worth a pretty penny. The cards are a little bit harder to get. The product is harder to get, but there's a massive demand for it. It's doing well over in Japan, and it's doing well in North America as well. Like, One Piece has staying power. I see it on buy lists for different game stores. See, I pay attention to things like that as a mark of a game's health. So, for example, Flesh and Blood, I used to see that on different buy lists for the game stores that I would check out. It's not there anymore. But One Piece is, and it's staying strong, right? You'd obviously see Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh! Those things you tend to see on buy lists, at least here in North America. I don't know exactly how they do it in Japan, but with Magic's ranking, I wouldn't be surprised at all if some of them don't even bother. So, ranked number 4, still not Magic. It's Duel Masters. Wizards of the Coast apparently creates this product. They tried to release it in North America as Kaijudo, and it failed miserably. That is a dead product. But apparently Duel Masters is doing live and well, and the game has been around for a very long time. So it's not super surprising that it manages to have some power. It is funny to me how much higher it ranks than Magic, but the really funny one on the list to me is number 5. That is the HoloLive official game. Now, if you are a dinosaur like me, you can be forgiven for going, HoloLive? Like holo like foils? No. HoloLive are the VTubers. You know, Moosh Moosh Senpai, oh, arigato, I am cute little anime lady who jiggle on screen for you. You know what I mean? Like that. It's that. A bunch of VTubers, bro. People who pretend to be anime characters on live streams. That's it. This is a card game based around digital live streamers, and it is beating Magic the Gathering. How insane is that? How does Magic drop the ball so much that they're getting crushed by Moosh Moosh arigato, I am cute girl? Like, it's amazing. It's not just girls, by the way. There's dudes with little skulls on. They're like, I'm a big, beefy anime man, and I'm going to hug you, ladies. I don't know. I'll be real. I don't watch the HoloLive live streams, but they do banger numbers. If you actually go and look at the channels when these guys are live streaming, they'll have 20,000, 30,000 people in their live stream. But this is literally just a bunch of anime celebrities that are crushing Magic the Gathering. Because guess what? Number 6 on the list, we still haven't reached Magic. Number 6 on the list is Weiss Schwarz, which I always call Weeb Schwarz. So that is a game where you can have a Prussian tank that turns into a hot anime chick. And it has Weiss Schwarz is this random crazy waifu game, and they are dominating Magic. After that, we've got a game called Battle Spirits. I only ever heard about this once. One other guy in the world mentioned Battle Spirits to me. I literally don't even know what to tell you about that game. I have no idea. I didn't even know it still existed, right? Then, coming in, all the way ranked at number 8 out of 10, we finally got Magic the Gathering. We did it, boys! We're number 8. So let's round out the list, and then we'll talk about why this is happening. So number 9, something I've never even heard of, Union Arena. Okay, now when I brought this up in a live stream, because we discussed this on a live stream a few days ago. So if you want to be in the know, make sure you're over on my live stream channel. So we were talking about this a couple days ago. When Union Arena came up, somebody described it as all the IPs, like all of them. So everything is in this, and it's essentially supposed to take over Weeb Schwarz's place on the list. We'll see how that goes over time, but they're a newcomer that is really backed by a ton of different IPs, and so we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. And then number 10 is Dragon Ball Super, which is a game that I genuinely didn't know was still going. That was hot when it first came out, but I thought that it died off. Like, it genuinely did in my area. I'm not seeing it on buy lists for whatever. So as far as I'm concerned, that one is flourishing in Japan to a degree. It's funny because other card games being on the top 10 list at all, I consider to be a win. But Magic being all the way down at 8 is a very telling situation. And this is with Wizards of the Coast desperately trying to like woo the Japanese market. If you've ever wondered why, you're like, wait a minute, why does Japan get these special promos that we never get? Why are they getting the cool Cowboy Bebop craziness with special edition playmats and all this stuff? And we get a little bit of a taste of it. Sometimes they'll throw us a bone and give us a little bit of it, a couple of the cards. But War of the Spark, for example, the Japanese War of the Spark set had alternate versions of every single Planeswalker. All 36 Planeswalkers in that set had a Japanese alternate waifu version that looked so much better than the normal versions. The actual version of Liliana was done by the guy who did Final Fantasy art, right? That in foil is still worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So, Wizards of the Coast does all these maneuvers to try and woo the Japanese because over there, they have way higher standards for what they expect from their card games. And Wizards of the Coast has been lowering the standards for Magic constantly. Not only have they been cranking the price of the product, which puts it above the cost of a lot of the other things on the list, but at the same time, they've been actively decreasing the quality. Once upon a time, Japanese Magic cards were printed to an incredible standard. In fact, Wizards of the Coast would brag when they were doing a special set going, guess what guys, for the North American printing of this, we're going to use our Japanese printing facilities and give you guys the high quality cards. But Wizards has cut costs and the cards printed in Japan have actually decreased in quality. It was a slow, gradual kind of thing until all of a sudden it snowballed and you realized, wait a minute, I'm opening Japanese card packs and the card quality is as bad as the North American garbage that I'm getting. So Wizards wants you to pay almost double of any other card game and they're giving you the lowest card quality possible. On top of that, they have really restrictive WPN status requirements. So if you want to be a part of Wizards' premier network of stores, right, or the Wizards Play Network, sorry, premier stores are the top 5% of the WPN. So if you want to be a part of this network, there are a bunch of conditions you have to meet. You have to have a physical game store with X amount of space for people to play in. You have to have like actual street-facing property that you can put posters up and all this kind of stuff. Like, or there has to be windows accessible to the public with the posters and everything. They have a whole bunch of different requirements that stores in Japan literally can't meet because Japan is small, right? Like overall, compared to their population, they have a lot crammed into a little space. So these stores will be small and they don't have the ability to actually meet all these requirements. But Wizards of the Coast knows for a fact that Japan is where people are, like the people in Japan, I should say, have a very high standard. Because when they talked about Dustmore and they said the foils we're making for this set, you know, the crazy glittery Pokemon foils or whatever, we're making Japanese showcase level foils. So they absolutely for a fact know that the Japanese have much higher standards and yet they refuse to improve the card quality for them. And it's weird because the stuff that's printed over in Japan also gets shipped out to us for the pre-releases. The boxes that are used in the pre-releases are where you get Japanese packs, and pre-releases are your first impression of Magic. So it would go very good for them if they actually cared about the reputation and improved the card quality coming out of Japan. But they're just not doing it. They're absolutely arrogant and greedy. Hasbro needs a bunch of money, so they're demanding Wizards crank that money for us. Wizards is making all these crazy changes, but as well, pretty much everything that we talked about has something else to lean on in terms of Pokemon is a gigantic global juggernaut. But all these things have TV shows, or in the case of HoloLive, the equivalent of TV shows in the form of YouTube live streams, where Magic the Gathering has nothing. They don't have a TV show. They don't have a movie. That TV show that they're making for Netflix, they had it in production for 3 years and it got canceled. And then they announced it again like it was a brand new thing after they had gone through 4 different production teams. They scrapped everything from it and they're starting over. And it's just going to get canceled again. So Magic has nothing to really make it stand out and feel special and give it some extra lore backing. And on top of that, they're barely writing any story for it. You get 5 pages of tiny little essentially tiny articles that give you, well, the first one is dedicated to introducing the setting and the people, and the 5th one wraps everything up like that. Valgavoth got stabbed and Prof made a door and everybody's gone. Like, if you don't believe me, go over to my channel, Fantasy Geographic, check out the story for Duskmourn. You'll see how short it is. Even Bloomborough, which was banger, the story for that was short. It at least was coherent and consistent, but it was very rushed and very crammed. So Wizards has no way to make themselves stand out. They're low quality, they're overpriced, they don't have anything else to get people hyped up about the game, and in Japan, competition is tough. There's a million card games, and there are dedicated fan bases for all of these small card games too. Like, this is just the top 10 list. There are all these small independent card games that can absolutely survive over in Japan with the dedicated customer base. And Wizards is just blowing it. They're lucky that Japan isn't a bigger country and doesn't represent more of their overall market share, because they are absolutely fumbling it. And considering how amazing a game Magic is, I love it. Why do you think I keep coming and talking about it? I absolutely love Magic the Gathering. I want the game to succeed. I want things to be better for it. I really hate what Wizards of the Coast has been doing in recent times, with the exception of finally focusing on Standard again. We might eventually get back to where we need to be for the long-term health of Magic, which is great news. But ultimately, Wizards is making some bad choices, and those bad choices have compounded and lost them market share in a number of different places, but especially in Japan. So that wraps up everything I have to say in this video. Like I said earlier, tonight I'll be doing a live stream talking about how much of a disaster the Commander tier system is going to be. So you can find the link to that down in the pinned comment or the description of the video. Thanks for coming out and hearing what I have to say. A big thank you to my patrons for supporting my channel, and I will see you all in the next video.